Hi, Nick Collier here, and this is my shop. Come join me. We'll have some fun. We're going to take a couple of minutes out. We're going to do a little tour around the shop. I've had a few requests, especially from Kevin. Hey, Kevin. So let's just walk around the shop and talk about it a little bit. All right, well, you know, in the last month or so, we've put the new legs on this lathe here. I still haven't gotten this lathe. Uh-oh. Holy shit. The key is in the chuck. Yeah! Life is going to end. Anyhow. So I still haven't gotten this lathe tuned in. I'm still dinking around with it. It does a not a high-speed chatter, but a chatter when I put a little pressure on it. And so I'm going to go in and pull the headstock apart and look at the bearings, see if there's anything going on there. Because when I got it, the bearings were pretty dry, and it's possible that they burnt and they've got a little bit of wiggle factor. So there's the lathe, and here's my diamond grinding setup with the tables, and I use that a lot on carbide and other assorted things. Of course, fine. Light. Oh, look at that. All right, look, stop messing around, Nick. Okay. So we've continued around this this part of the shop. We've got this little project going on here. These are end caps for a bench that I'm making for my neighbor, and I'll show you the brackets in a little while, hopefully, if I remember. Come back to the arbor press, which I hardly use. I mean, I thought I would use it more, but you know, when it comes time to need it, mostly I go over to the, you know, the hydraulic press and just use that. But there's times when you know, the 20-ton hydraulic press has got a lot of power in it, and it'll bend something quicker than it'll do, and this is the advantage. Here's the nut crackers that I'm working on again for a local person here in town that sells them internationally, and you'll see more of them. These are just certain components. So let's move on to the sanding section. I built this, oh, I don't know, 30 years ago, and it has run and run and run and run. And probably about a year ago, I went in and put some new bearings in here and put the Zerk fittings in there, and the thing just keeps going and going and going and going. A real workhorse. My Hypertherm, which I thought I would use a lot, and I hardly ever use it. I don't know why. You know, of course I know why, because the pattern torch is such a pleasure to use. I mean, whatever it is that I have to do, I can just crank up the pattern torch and get pretty much a perfect cut. You can see some of the cuts down below here. I mean, you know, could you ask for more? Here's some scrap down here on the floor. You know, good, clean cuts. I can get circular cuts, I can get odd shapes, and most often I can get straight cuts by just putting this little bar up here, and the pattern torch will follow the bar and cut straight as an arrow. When the pattern torch runs, this thing needs to crank up, because, man, I'm telling you, it puts out some smoke and steam and whatever else. Okay, continuing, the pattern torch is no digital at all. This is built in the early 60s, and I love it. because there is nothing. The closest to digital is that little light right there. Oops. An anvil that I use from time to time, but not very much. Coming back around to a piece of 1/4-inch plate that I have hanging around here, trying to figure out what to do with it. And you know, from time to time I lop off a corner or cut off a section or cut something out of it. But other than that, it just kind of hangs out here. And the shaper, which I thought I would use this thing from day one. I swear I have not used it yet. Not on one project. I'm actually thinking about getting rid of it. But, you know, now that I got it all running perfect and everything is working just right, okay, let's get rid of it. But, you know, I bought it for, I can't remember, $300 or something like that. And they're going for $1,400-1,500, so I could come out with enough money to buy some other tool and put in this place. Of course, Harbor Freight cherry picker. Yeah, well, you know, that's just part of the tooling. And we come around to the, okay, I'm going to show you the legs of the bench that I'm building. Oh, there's one leg, or one side. You can kind of see, and these brackets will connect to a piece of, in fact, there's the piece right there, piece of cedar, rough cut. And then we'll have that as the seat, and then this as the backing. And this project is for my next door neighbors. They came over one day and said, "Hey, can you build us some benches?" And I said, "Why, sure." I got this portable planer here a while back because lately I've been doing picture frames for my paintings. You know, I went to the local store to have a picture frame made, and it was like, I don't know, $200 or $300 just for a small frame. Now, get out of here. So I paid $40 for this planer and bought a couple other tools. I probably got about $500 in the whole system, and now I can cut as many frames as I want. And in fact, well, here's this old beat-up saw that I just kind of leave out in the weather. I've got a nicer one in the building. You can see the cuts that I can get. That comes out pretty nice. And, you know, set of chains for my truck. Coming back around to the disaster here in this corner. And more raw wood. About every 2 or 3 years I'll gather up enough dead trees to have a saw guy come out and you know, bring his portable mill and mill up a bunch of wood. And that, you know, last time I did it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and you know, I still got a pile of wood left, but you know, not the key sizes that I want. So I'm getting ready to do this again soon. Coming back in, we've got the rolling mill, Harbor Freight, and of course I attached the motor to it. This was a plumbing threader. And then down here on the ground, this is basically the catch-all. I mean, you know, everything that I don't really want and I want to figure out where I'm going to put it ends up on the floor here. There's a bunch of bolts and some motor oil, and I don't know what's in there. And then if you look back in here, we've got a bunch of wood and panels and stuff like that. Over in that corner, is the automotive section, and you can see how dedicated I am to my automotive section. It is a disaster waiting to happen. But, you know, once in a while I'll work on my car, and I'm, you know, all of the tools that I need are somewhere in there. I just don't exactly know where. And then up above that, I don't know if you can see it. You can see part of it. Hang on, let's get in a little closer. Well, while we're working our way around to there, we'll come into this Onan generator, which is 7,000 watts, and just about enough power to drive this shop and the house and our 2 RV rentals, which will be pretty good. I got it running, and it had been sitting for a while, so you know, I kind of babied it and got it running, and then it turns out that the voltage regulator down in here, where's the regulator? Oh, it's right there. Nope, right there. The voltage regulator was bad, so I had to buy a new one of those, $250. But you know, hey, I got this generator for free out of one of the RVs that I have on the property. So, and it runs like a dream. Here, I'll crank it up. Not bad, huh? I mean, literally, I hot wired it like, you know, like you did back in the 60s, and got it running that way. So coming over to my shear table, and we've got a 12-inch shear here that, you know, I cut a bunch of these little guys for the nutcrackers. And then a Beverly shear, which cuts arcs and angles, and I mean you can cut probably a 1-inch hole, not a hole, but a 1-inch radius out of a piece of oh, I'd say that probably will handle probably 14 gauge or so. So those are 2 tools that work really well. I use them a lot. The nuts and bolts section, oh man, we got nuts and bolts up the yin-yang. And then the little dinky nuts and bolts hanging out, somewhat organized, who knows. Washers, Allen bolts, metric bolts, springs, all in these little trays here. Man, we're doing an in-depth journey here. Hang on a second, let me turn some lights on. Okay, there's better. This is my hand tool and power tool cubby, and really, when I go to look for a tool, I just look generally somewhere in this area because I know it's there somewhere. And I don't like to wrap up my cords, so I just kind of leave them just, you know, hanging. So that's part of that. Oh, another table grinder setup I did a few years back. This is regular corundum, whatever, for doing high-speed steel. And then, of course, a good old Craftsman grinder, and I think I've got a Balder over there, but I hardly ever use it. All right, so let's move into the back section of this shop, which is, well, in this part, it's more about production stuff, and this is more of the Nutcrackers ingredients. We're about halfway built on that process. Bolts and nuts, Some of them are just random. Some of them are specific. The specific ones are over here for some project or another that I either did or will do. And all of the ones down here are for that, again, the Nutcracker. Moving on. Oh yeah, the 5-gallon bucket storage area. That seems to be where they just end up. Yep, that's, you know, another mess. Hand chisels, some carpentry stuff. I can just get my carpentry tools and grab that bucket and just walk over to someplace and start using it, which is what, you know, makes it convenient. A joiner, an old Delta joiner. Let's see. There we go. Great old tool. I bought that at a garage sale just as you see it. Well, maybe with not all the dust on it. For $35. It was a score. I couldn't get it on my truck fast enough. So we come around from there and we come into the Grizzly planer or shaper. I'm not sure what it's called for sure, but you can see here's a shaper head here, and it creates this shape here. And this is one of the, this is actually a set that's going to go into a picture frame. So rotating around, we've got a little Harbor Freight brake that, you know, when I bought it, I thought, oh man, this is kind of ridiculous. It's, you know, going to be a waste of money. I swear I use this thing all the time. Here's some pieces that I need to bend for the Nutcracker project. So this I'm getting rid of. You know anybody who wants it? Please let me know. There's a bunch of just kind of random stuff back here. Oftentimes what happens is when I have someone come in and work in my shop to do their own project or something, and once in a while I'll have that where you know, I mentor somebody or they just want to use the shop for a little while to do a special project. I'll clean off this bench and give them this bench so that they're not in my way, and yet they've got a bench to work from. Of course, it's a little messy right now, but you know, hey. This is the indoor saw, and you can see it's piled full of shit. Well, you know, when I built this shop, I thought, oh man, this is such a huge building. I will never, in a lifetime ever fill this building. And of course, within about a year, the building was full, and that's how that goes. The paint department, you can see there are some paints in there that have been there for 20 years. And one of these days, I plan to go in there and get rid of all the paints. But, you know, from time to time, I'll grab one and use it, like this primer I just got through using just the other day. There's only about this much left in it. But, you know, a couple of swipes with a brush and I primed it. This is the exotic metals. Well, not that, but everything else laying here is 8620, 12L14, 4140, all the exotic materials that I can grab onto that won't get confused with other things. Now, I've marked some of them. I don't know what that number is. Obviously, I didn't do it. 1040 cold roll. What's this one? I think that's 4140, but usually I put a little stamp on the end. So, a bunch of chain. Coming round to my kindling pile, that by the end of winter this thing will be back down to 0 again, or at least close to 0. And over to the chop saw that I use constantly. Filing cabinet. It has electrical stuff in it, which is a great use for a filing cabinet since I hate paperwork. And we've got a ceramic kiln back there, which I want to use more, but for some reason I don't. And here we've got a Dewalt Chop Saw, blade saw, and then a friction saw, which that combination, man, you got all your bases covered, except it makes a huge mess and very loud. Over here, a bandsaw, that's what it is. Anyhow, I think I got that at a garage sale for, I don't know, $10 or something. It didn't really work that well, so I put I think it had the stand, but it didn't have a motor, and it was missing a bunch of stuff, and so I geared it down. I mean, it was for wood, but I geared it down. You can kind of see the gearing in here. The large to small to a large, and it gears that blade down, so then now it travels slow enough that that it doesn't burn the blade out if I try to cut metal. And I'll cut metal or wood. More chain, yep. Extra pieces of metal in odd shapes and sizes, yep. Coming round, we've got my little dinky chain or bandsaw, good old Harbor Freight. I mean, there are some Harbor Freight things that are pieces of shit, but I swear I have had this bandsaw for 35 years and it still runs. All I've done to it is put a couple of motors in it over that period of time, and bearings, just a set of bearings right in here, and that's it. And it still is accurate as long as I put a fresh blade in. I probably put $1 million worth of blades in it, but it keeps running and running. I'm gonna turn a light on here. We've got the Carolina saw, which is hell of a saw. I got that at a garage sale. I think I paid $400 for it, but I needed one, and I had a project that I had to deal with, and I needed it, and there it was. And normally I wouldn't pay $400 for something, but I did, and man, I've used it every day. I use it every day. It's a good saw. Okay, back around to the 20-ton shop press, which I built, some 4 or 5 years ago, out of an old wood splitter. This is the wood splitter ram, and it was 20 ton. I thought, well, hey, and it turned out that a lady's husband had died, and this was sitting out in the back field, the frame. And I says, hey, what are you going to do with that? And she goes, well, I've got a gold ring I need to get sized. Can you do that? Because she knew I was a jeweler. She says, if you can do that, I'll give you this. I went, yes, I'll do it. So I got that, fixed her gold ring. This thing also doubles as a wood splitter. You can see some of the wood down there. I just put a wood splitting head on it. There it is right there. And start splitting. Oxyacetylene, I couldn't do without it. I've got this set of tanks, which is my go-to tanks. And there's a set of mid-sized tanks, which are my on-the-road tanks. And there's a little dinky set way back there in the hole that are my jeweler's on-the-road set. And, you know, I hardly use those anymore, but they're there. Once in a while, I'll grab them and haul it over to someplace on the property. So we're back to the wood stove with a heat converter, which goes down through those pipes, down into this pipe here, and this PEX pipe goes throughout the floor and keeps this shop, well, not warm, because it's cold as a witch's tit. But it is warmer. We got the old South bin that I've had for, I don't know, 40 years now. It's been a great old lathe. I just really, when I need to do accurate work, I come to this lathe. And the two drill presses that I've had for a while, I use those all the time. This one is slow, and I mostly just do countersinking on this drill press, although once in a while I'll have something that I need to do, but mostly I just use the Bridgeport for heavy duty work. And then this one is the medium speed, and this is the newest member here. I actually bought this, I don't know, 20 years ago or so for my jewelry system. And I went to Sears, and I must have went through 20 of these to try to find one that the spindle didn't have any give to it. And I swear to God, all 20 of them just was sloppy as hell. But this one was fine, so I got it, and it was 50, 60 bucks. And I just brought it out of my jewelry bench into here, so this will be the high-speed one. And that's not even as high as it can go. Oh, I guess I better point towards it, huh? I just built a new bench here to give myself a place to put tools away from all of the dust and scrap. We come back around. It looks messy, but it's fairly well organized. We got wrenches, we've got grease guns, we've got a whole box of keys and drill bits and mill bits. And once in a while I'll accidentally leave this open and I'll run the mill and it'll throw a bunch of chips in here. And of course that's where they stay. Bunch of old drill bits, some countersinks, more countersinks, just the regular stuff. And then up onto the Bridgeport, or not the Bridgeport, but Inco, which was a company that existed back in the 80s. And I bought this mill for, I think I paid $1,800 for it. I mean, the guy had a machine shop. He retired back in the 80s or 90s. And brought a couple tools with him and moved from the Bay Area to up here to Nevada City. And this was one of the tools. There was a Victor lathe and a bunch of other smaller stuff. And literally, this was a brand new tool when he moved it. And then he retired and he stopped doing machine work on any kind of given basis. And I mean, literally, this was a brand new tool. It had a couple of little scratches in the bed. I mean, I put most of the scratches in it, you know, just minor scratches. And all the ways still had the scrape marks in them. Oh man, I was really pleased. Plus it had a 45-inch bed, and my old lathe had a 30-inch bed or something like that. And interestingly enough, I paid $1,800 for this, and I paid $1,000 for my old mill. And so I painted up my old mill and I put it on Craigslist for $3,200 and sold it in 2 or 3 days. And I was like, okay, so I basically got this for free. Yippee! All right, well, you know, then there's some implements of destruction. We'll go around to the, hey, this is turning into a full half hour. We'll go around to the Moss lathe, which was built in Czechoslovakia in 1954. Great old lathe. I mean, it's worn out, but it still is a super workhorse. As long as I'm not trying to do accurate, I can get within a couple of thousandths of anything. Most of the time, you know, most of my projects are, you know, 1/4 inch. And so, as I said, I use the south bend to get real accurate, or I'll extend the chuck out to about there and get onto a part of the bed that is still fresh, and I can get fairly accurate there. Okay, moving on to the welding section, which is just what it is, welding. All right, now I'll take you into this is the workshop part. Now let's go into the play area. Well, not exactly. And if you look back in here, this is more of the nutcracker stuff. And we're at the painting part of the project now. And you can see there's one end cap. And here is another end cap. So paint them up, and then eventually everything gets painted, everything gets welded together, and then I assemble them and I deliver them and collect a big shitload of money. All right, so now we come into the fun part of my shop. And things are fairly in disarray right now because this room back here, most of those paintings are in this room, and I couldn't have the paintings and spray paint in the same room, so I put them in this room here and then close this door, and that keeps them separate. But I love this big piece, and I'm ready to stretch another canvas that big because that was so much fun to do. It just really, it got me. So this is, you know, a bit messy, but you know, for me, it's got to be somewhat messy in order to be able to create this stuff. And you can see most of these are framed, and this is all of that framing stuff that we talked about earlier. Here's two of my newest pieces. This one right here is pretty cool. Can I get the whole thing in? Let me go sideways. No, sideways isn't going to work. Let's go, just go back a bit. There we go. So the one on the left I finished about a month ago, and it came out pretty cool. And the one on the right I just finished, and I can come in closer with that one because I don't know, it's got a kind of a reflective value to it, doesn't it? I just really like it. Experimenting with color. So, I'll be outside and I'll be working my ass off and I'll be, doing really accurate, tight work, and I'll get all stressed out and I'll come in here and grab a paintbrush or whatever it is that I'm going to use and whip up, just lay some paint in for 15 minutes or 20 minutes and calm down, and then I can go back outside and do some more. That's a watercolor I did about, I don't know. It says 13, so it's about 7 years ago. That came out good. The jewelry bench. It's, I built this entire building, including the dome. And with jewelry, you need natural light, or you need a lot of fluorescence. And I like natural. So I built this entire bench and this entire dome and everything as a jeweler. And I got it all done, and I was really happy with it. And I started making jewelry, and about 6 months later, I retired from jewelry making because my hands started getting pretty shaky. And I couldn't really do that fine motor skill anymore. So the jewelry bench basically sits. Now I'll come in here from time to time and make something, or I'll bring a machine project in here that needs some really fine tuning, and I'll use these tools to do that fine tuning. But other than that, this thing just kind of sits, which is unfortunate. But at the same time, it's cool. All right, so here's another piece I did a couple of months back. And I think it more goes this way. I know I signed it. Yep, there it is. So it's more, oops, come on. There it is. That's got a fairly good feel to it. I really like that piece. And this one was back in my more realistic era, probably 5 years ago or so. It came out pretty good. And I just put the frame around it here just last month. There's one from the realistic period. Again, framed just last month or so. So, there we go. This is my life. This is where I love being. This is where I love to hang out and to create whatever it is I like to create. I mean, not just this studio, this part, which is the paint or the color studio, but back in the machine shop. I love being in my machine shop. It gives me much pleasure, and also, bring some bucks in. So for now, we're gonna hang this up. We're gonna go back to that other project, and hey, Nick Collier checking out.